we'll see how it goes. We are live broadcasting from the Digital Workforce booth here at Rockwell Automation Fair. Just some incredible things we've seen the last 2 days. Emerging technologies, just fascinating things in the world of automation. And here in the Digital Workforce booth, we're seeing all of these incredible projects, these initiatives that are bringing collaboration between academia and industry and helping to prepare the future workforce for these really interesting careers in automation. And our guest today is part of that ecosystem and the partnerships with Rockwell that are helping to prepare and create and inspire this talent for future smart manufacturing careers. Our first guest this morning at Automation Fair is Conrad Leiva. He is the Director of Workforce and Ecosystem Development at CESMII. Conrad, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be part of this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those in our audience who don't know, my name is Melissa Martin. I am today's guest host, stepping in for Matt Kirkner, so happy to be joining us all on YouTube Live today. So Conrad, yesterday we actually kicked off day one with your CEO, John Dyke. So yeah. Matt and John had a really cool conversation all about CESMII, what you guys do there, but if our audience, I would recommend our audience go back and watch that video, but if you missed it, Conrad, give us a little bit, what is CESMII? What do you guys do?
Okay, well, we'll be a little repetitive, but CESMII is one of 16 manufacturing institutes funded by the U.S. government to help manufacturers accelerate their adoption of new technologies so they become more productive and more competitive at a global scale.
And what does CESMII stand for? It's an acronym, right?
And CESMII is the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute.
Okay, excellent.
Which is a mouthful, so we like to just focus on, we're the Smart Manufacturing Institute.
The Smart Manufacturing Institute, absolutely. And we'll be talking a little bit about some of the new things that you guys have developed on that side of smart manufacturing. Yeah. Now, you said that you guys are funded by the United States government. Which particular department within that?
So we're on, several of the institutes are on the Department of Defense side, and we're on the Department of Energy side.
Department of Energy, and that's where that sustainability and clean energy side
comes
from. Yeah,
there is a close tie between smart manufacturing, sustainability, saving energy. So when we increase productivity, we increase the use of resources, and we eliminate waste, and we, at the end of the day, save energy and natural resources.
Absolutely. So, Conrad, you've been with CESMII for a few years. We were talking before the broadcast. How did you make your way to CESMII? What brought you here?
Yeah, well, I've been doing thought leadership and championing smart manufacturing for a long time, and been like 11 or 12 years I've been the chair of the Smart Manufacturing Working Group at MESA International, which is another group, another consortium group that brings industry leaders together to work on manufacturing technologies and innovation. And came up at CESMII. Some of the folks knew me from MESA and the work I was doing there, and wanted me to come on board. So it was a great opportunity for me to jump on here and continue that path with a focus on education.
Right, absolutely. So your role at CESMII, as I mentioned before, Director of Workforce and Ecosystem Development, what exactly does you and your team do there?
Well, so the mission of CESMII is to accelerate adoption of smart manufacturing in the U.S., and we cannot do that with technology alone. So we believe that education is a critical part of that acceleration. And that we need to educate some specific roles. We need all the way from leadership that needs to champion the adoption of technology.
Right.
In these factories, we need to train and educate the OT, IT specialists that are going to implement the technology and the solutions. And we need to educate the workforce and get them ready to use smart manufacturing methods in their everyday jobs and leverage data
Yes.
in their everyday jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. You said a bunch of stuff there that really resonates with our audience. Certainly that last point of data and the leveraging of
Yeah.
data. I mean, it seems like every conversation we've had the last 2 days has talked about all of the data we're now able to pull from the
Yeah.
manufacturing floor, and it's just massive amounts of data, but the question is, what do we do with that data, right? And how do we leverage, first of all, how do we pull the right kind of data?
Yeah.
And then how do we leverage it and use it in ways that makes us more productive, more efficient, more sustainable, and just make better decisions for our manufacturing processes. So I love the data piece. I love that you start with leadership, right? So that's
Yeah.
really, really important. We hear all the time that, we have to make these digital transformations, but it starts with the leaders,
Yes.
making sure that they get their teams on board, they're sharing the vision for the organization,
Yeah.
where they're going.
They really need to understand and link the technology adoption to
Yeah.
their business strategy.
Right. Yeah, and help their employees understand their role within that.
Yes.
Because I think you get some people who are tempted to say, well, am I going to fall behind when
Yeah.
when the company progresses, what's going to happen to me? Or are they going to automate me out of a job? Or, and so I think being clear about that vision and how we get there, and then how they're going to make sure that they bring along their team members to upskill them, to reskill them as needed to be ready for that smart manufacturing transformation.
And so it's not all about just the technical skills. Like
Yes.
you said, the organizational side and the culture side is
Yeah.
important to address. So you put all the workforce at ease so they understand the role of data and technology in their everyday jobs.
Yeah, on that culture side, what would you say if you could give some advice to leaders of manufacturing companies about, when they're thinking about crafting this vision for their company, creating a culture that's prepared to change, what are some things that they can do to bring everybody on board?
It's really, I'm glad to see that some manufacturers have sent their people to conferences
Right,
like these,
yeah.
and are exposing them to more technology, and so they come back excited
Yeah.
about how they could implement things in their factory,
Yes.
make them part of that solution finding and architecting, and make sure they understand the why behind the technology.
Right.
And it's not just about eliminating jobs.
No.
It is about increasing productivity,
Yep.
becoming more competitive, but their jobs are actually becoming more exciting.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're and high-tech jobs, and I know I get very excited about it. So I think more people should be, and I think that's awareness
Right.
is part of what leaders need to help
Yeah.
promote in their companies.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, 100%. And if you're watching this and your team members aren't at Automation Fair, make sure they get here
Yeah.
next year,
Yeah,
right? I
that's
mean,
right.
and not just the the plant managers, but send some people who are on the floor, right? I think that's important too.
Yeah, all tiers.
Yep. So, your role is working a lot with building out that ecosystem and the partnerships. So tell us about some of the partners, the industrial employers who have partnered with CESMII on some of your initiatives.
Yeah. Oh, we have great manufacturers in our ecosystem at CESMII, and they have very important roles towards education. So first, manufacturers are serving as examples, and especially to smaller manufacturers, because manufacturers want to see it working somewhere before they invested it.
Right.
So especially smaller manufacturers
Yep.
tend to be not the early adopters, right? But so as we democratize, as we say, as we want scale of adoption, we really need those examples out there. And second, those manufacturers are helping us build the competency requirements for education programs, and they help share with us what are the skills they're having a hard time finding
Yep.
in the talent pool, what are the skills they want to update in their workforce,
Yep.
and what are the delivery mechanisms they prefer, and that helps shape the education programs. And then we have the industrial vendors like Rockwell, that play an important role
Yep.
uh, because they help us incorporate real hardware and software and real industrial hardware and software into education programs. So that manufacturers get the workforce already coming to the factory with the skills that they need, with the experience, with the industrial tools.
Right. And so to go back to your first point, you're right that a lot of this smart manufacturing has been led by the large companies, those Fortune 5 companies, the brands we all recognize, and then the small to mid-size. They wait to see it proven out before they decide to make any investments or changes. It seems like we've been talking about that broadly as a topic for a few years now. Are you seeing more small to mid-size starting to realize they need to take action and being more comfortable with Industry 4.0?
Not as much as I would like to.
Okay.
So I think we still have a way to go there. So we just formed a manufacturing executive council.
Right.
And with a lot of those larger industry leaders, and part of that group mission is to be a beacon, be examples, and get more of this knowledge and thought leadership out there, because we need to motivate the smaller manufacturers, and it's a big important part of CESMII's mission to show how in our demonstration centers and working with the manufacturing extension partnerships, the
Right.
MEPs at each state, that how small manufacturers can take the right steps and a gradual approach to implementing a lot of these methodologies. So we're working, we're chipping away at it.
Yeah.
So we're seeing more success stories, and as we get more of those out there, it should grow, hopefully exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to see that executive council grow and see how it helps to create some of that thought leadership that can help those other companies within
Yeah.
the supply chain. And I know that Matt and John talked a lot about that yesterday in their conversation. So once
Yeah.
again, to our viewers, I would recommend go back and listen to that conversation from yesterday. I want to move on, Conrad, because I know our viewers can't see it. We're in the small corner of a very
Yeah.
interesting and lively, and oh my goodness, this booth has just been full of activity.
It has been
the last 2 days.
Yeah,
and
my voice is a little iffy today.
yeah, you got that day 2 voice.
Yeah.
And so part of what is being shown here in this booth, we've got tons and tons of partners of Rockwell's digital workforce ecosystem displaying some of their projects, and I'm just
Yeah.
looking around at some of the things. And one of the things that has been a high point of interest is this new smart manufacturing learning system
Oh,
that CESMII co-developed along with some partners like Rockwell and Amatrol. Tell us about this smart manufacturing learning system. I know that you had previewed a little bit that part of what your team is doing is kind of helping to create the systems and the curriculum to prepare the future workforce.
Yeah.
So tell us about this really unique system.
Well, you see there's all kinds of learning systems out there, and a lot of colleges are incorporating additive and robots into
Yep.
their education, but we saw a gap where we need to help move the needle beyond Industry 3 methodologies that are heavy PLC centric, and do more on the industrial Internet of Things.
Right.
And getting leveraging there's cheap sensors in that kit that are like a few $100s to implement. There's edge devices that are just a couple of $1,000s to implement. So we wanted a kit that showed how there's low-cost solutions for small manufacturers, and teach the workforce that how they could take that back to their manufacturer and implement these type of solutions, and how to integrate that with the PLC solutions.
Right.
So it shouldn't be separate solutions. We can do the wireless, the Internet of Things type of sensors
Right.
next to the PLCs, and we can all connect it all in a secure manner, and we needed to teach those skills.
Right.
So Amatrol, a great partner, and integrating this and making it in a nice footprint that we can deploy at community colleges, even high schools. We're thinking of doing that. So we have great partners here. I just see over there James Wall from SACA.
Yeah.
So the Smart Automation Certificate Alliance.
Yes.
Another great partner, which is going to become very important because we have traditionally depended on 4-year colleges, and we know that certain degrees from certain universities, we know the quality of employee we get.
Right.
But as we want to move into more modular, stackable credentials,
yes,
we need to put the credibility of a certification program,
right,
like SACA's, behind those credentials, so that manufacturers get that same level of confidence that
right,
people with these credentials will have those skills. When they see it on their resume, it will mean more if it comes with a credential behind it. So I hope you see how all these partners play a role in that ecosystem, right? Helping us put the right hardware and software, put the right integration kits, getting those labs into those industrial labs in the community colleges and universities, and how do we get credentialing programs that then put credibility behind this smaller packaging of education, that we can deploy on as an alternative or on top of the 4-year degree programs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. To build off of that last thing you said, that smaller pieces, the buildable, the stackable. I mean, these are all words we're hearing so much more in education of yes, we can send our students to a 4-year university, but as we're all going to need to be lifelong learners, what are more on-ramps and off-ramps to education, and what are smaller bite-sized chunks of education and training that we can do?
Continuous learning, right? We hear that, and I think that needs to become the new norm.
Yes.
I mean, one of the things I'm so impressed with the technology we see at the shows every year, more technology, right? It's moving very fast.
Yes.
But the education programs and the 4-year degrees, they are not moving as fast. So we need new ways of deploying education. And we have a lot of partners in the CESMII ecosystem, educators that are helping us develop new ways to package more modular education and incorporate into those 4-year degrees, but also make them available separately as stackable credentials. So I think there's going to be a wave of change. I'm hoping, and we can make it happen. It's hard to change things in education.
Yes, we know that.
It's all gradual, but there is a lot of interest in creating these more modular education options that employees could do as they work.
Right.
Because it's not anymore the rule that you take a 4-year degree and you're going to use these skills for the next 10, 15 years. It just doesn't work that way.
It doesn't exist anymore.
You're going to have to refresh skills at least every 4 years. Something so how you can't go back for another 4-year or 2-year degree. It's like let's go back, and can we do this in 3 months, 6 months, packages that we can do as we are working. So we're thinking about all these new ways to package education. It's exciting.
New ways to package education, the word modular. I mean, if you guys are listening to this, go back, rewatch that, and put it on repeat, because exactly what Conrad said is exactly what we need to be doing in education. Rethinking about how we think about continuous learning, lifelong learning, and those degrees aren't going to last a lifetime anymore. And how do we rethink how education is part of our entire continuum of life and part of just that career pathway for life? And I have nothing to add, because that was just a fantastic way of putting it. I mean, everything, I agree with you. And if we think about that, okay, we need that lifelong learning, different options for post-secondary, and lifelong learning for our workforce. Now let's take it back a little bit to the K-12.
Okay.
How do we get more students in maybe late middle school, early high school, thinking about smart manufacturing careers and considering that as an option?
Well, we need to make sure they're thinking that there's jobs beyond the Googles, the Amazon, that they realize that manufacturing is high tech. Here I see a group of students that are working with robots back there, that are seeing these industrial systems. We need more of that.
Yes.
And I find that there's not enough teachers that really understand manufacturing and know manufacturing. So we also need to expose the teachers to a lot of this. I think high schools need to take more advantage of Manufacturing Day, which is every October.
Yep.
And a lot of manufacturers open their doors, and we really need to expose more kids early on to the options and the careers in manufacturing, that they're high-tech, high-skill careers, that there's good paying jobs, and that these are lifelong careers. I mean, really, there's good careers.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right about that. We've got a FIRST robotics team standing right here. But yeah, the exposure, the interest, changing perceptions for parents, but getting real, authentic industrial technology into the classroom, like the smart manufacturing learning system. It's accessible to a high school age student. It's perfectly accessible to somebody that age, and really gets them thinking about the technology that they could work with for their career. And I'm really glad you brought up about, certainly we have a teacher shortage, no doubt. Everybody knows that there's a teacher shortage, but a shortage of teachers who have a solid grasp of modern smart manufacturing technology. We see a lot of teachers who have been in the field for many decades and maybe need some updated training or, on what's actually happening in the workforce. And like you had said earlier, the workforce in industry and technology in industry is moving so quickly, and it's really, really hard for education to keep up. And to be fair, they're so limited on their resources, and we know that teachers are stretched thin to begin with. But I know that there's many externship opportunities for teachers over the summer to maybe get their hands on some manufacturing and to get some continuous learning.
We need to do more of that. We're putting some programs together that are really focusing on educating the educators.
Yes.
And we're doing a lot more of that because we realize that's how we scale.
Yeah.
That's how we scale education and more knowledge in smart manufacturing techniques out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Conrad, we've just had a fantastic conversation. I just have two more questions before we wrap up. And the first one, I know you've been, bombarded most of the time that you've been here, people talking to you about the smart manufacturing learning system, but if you've gotten a chance to kind of walk around, what's the most interesting thing that you have seen at your time the last couple of days, and what's your biggest takeaway coming away from this event?
Well, there's so much new technology going out there. A lot of stuff with robots, automation, augmented reality. So my biggest takeaway is how do we incorporate all these things into education as fast as possible? So that is really my biggest takeaway from the show. I keep getting excited about all the technology, but then in the back of my mind, how do we get it into more modular education and make it available?
Right, and no doubt you and your team at CESMII will come away and sit down and come up with some strategies and continue your good work of putting curriculum, putting programming out there that will accomplish just that mission. So our final question for you, and it's one that we ask every guest on the Tech Ed podcast, if you could give one piece of advice to a high school sophomore as they consider their future pathway, what would it be?
Take a serious look at manufacturing as a career choice. Take advantage of Manufacturing Day. Look for those open houses. Find your friend that works in manufacturing and learn about it. There's fantastic opportunities. These exciting skills that will be needed for years. We have a huge demand for manufacturing talent, and job postings and that are not getting fulfilled today.
Right.
And it's just going to keep growing.
Yes.
So look at manufacturing as a career. That's my advice. Check out a plant floor near you. And if you're a manufacturer, please make connections with your high schools, with community colleges, and open your doors to them so that we expose more people to manufacturing.
Take advantage of Manufacturing Day. Look into manufacturing as a potential career, and employers, make sure you're partnering with your educators so that you can provide those opportunities to your students. We've just had an incredible discussion with Conrad Leiva, Director of Workforce and Ecosystem Development at CESMII, the Smart Manufacturing Institute. Conrad, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a delight.
Awesome.